Alright, today we are being presented with a pretty lengthy question here. What makes a good Warframe? The better title to this that isn't as clickbait is what makes someone believe that a Warframe is good or bad. Because ultimately, we don't have the difficulty nor the content to determine whether a frame is quote unquote meta or good, because there usually isn't like much of a lost state in Warframe in its current iteration. Ultimately, this is just my opinion, and this is how I develop my opinion, and this is how I encourage you to maybe try to think about developing your opinion on Warframes more. This presentation is going to break down the quality of a Warframe using a stupid little triangle diagram pictured here, but we'll get into that into a second. It was revealed to me in a dream, and now I have to make a video on it because that's how the channel works. It explores 4 tiers, and as we progress up this little pyramid here, I'm doing a pyramid scheme in Warframe for Platinum on this video today. As we move up the triangle here, base or the pyramid rather, this will increase in holistic nature. So we will be looking at a more complete Warframe. The subjectivity and opinionation of, if that's even a word, of the Warframe will be taken into question, and we're going to apply more scrutiny as well. So each tier is going to explore 2 primary questions and an observation, along with looking at some examples here that I'm just going to yap. This is probably going to be my yappiest video out of all of them. This video is audio focused with a fairly relevant visual aid towards the beginning, which is that pyramid that I showed you, but you can get 90% of the content of this video just by listening. Oh, how did this slide get here? My fault. Like, subscribe, hype, all that stuff helps the channel a lot, and I love making content, so the extra support is really sick, and this is an exciting one to make, to be honest. I think this is pretty unique. So some disclaimers to prevent cringe comments. I make this slide because I had some guy in a held YouTube comment compare me to his kid about being impatient and not wanting 3-day Warframe crafting times, and he basically just called me a bitch and told me that I should be more patient. Really weird play, but that's why I make these disclaimer sections. This is an opinion piece. I don't feel that I'm relaying any absolute truths or divine discoveries. This is a simple, refutable model that I just made for fun, right? I will talk about certain Warframes during this presentation. I believe some are stronger than others. It's an opinion. That's okay. It's my opinion. I love all Warframes, but I just want some to be better, and obviously, even if they are good, I can still not like them. It's just, this is the nature of the internet, right? All comments and criticism need to be constructive. That being said, this is like the video where I want you to comment what you think, right? This is an important one. I strongly encourage you to comment and discuss, because this is actually something I made. This is one of my favorite topics in game design. This is something that I made, so I would like constructive criticism and your thoughts. Not because I, obviously criticize the model if you want, but more that I want to apply the model to other players. So let's get into it, right? So if we take a quick gander at the model here, we have, again, so as we move up, first of all, note that each piece of content here, each category involves the content and regards the content that is beneath it. So keep that in mind. So as we go up, we are, at the bottom here, we're making more factual, less opinionated observations. Really, these are just like observations. They're basic. They're more or less like usually irrefutable. As we move up, it becomes more opinionated, and we start looking at an entire Warframe. The bottom here might just look at random abilities or whatever, while once we get to the top here, we will be looking at the entire Warframe as a design, like from a design perspective. So strength in general, which asks the questions like, what does this frame actually do? Like, how relevant is what they do? Strength in novelty / uniqueness, which is how do they perform what they do? Is it unique in potency or mechanics? Strength and opportunity, which is what can I afford to do because of this? What strong meta options can I use? Is strength opportunity. This one's a little bit confusing, but again, I have slides for all of them, so don't worry about it. And up tippy top here is strength in design, which is a total shit show when we get there, but basically it asks, does this kit work as a unit, and is it satisfying to play? And once we move through the entire pyramid, we shit out an opinion. All right, simple as that. So let's get started. Strength in general. This is basically asking 2 questions. The first one being, what does the Warframe actually do? And we're using very individual basic observations to kind of determine what the Warframe is capable of at a very surface level. For example, Equinox and Gara have nukes. What is a nuke? I mean, usually we define it by its range first, and then its damage second. But basically something that can instantly kill a lot of enemies, ideally. Whether it does it at a high level or a low level isn't super specific. There's a lot of reasons to nuke at a low level, lots of reasons to nuke at a high level, so on and so forth. This tier doesn't like super stress the quality of what's being done, as that is the goal of the next tier. My only concern here is drawing a picture of the pieces that make the Warframe whole, ability, right? And then we can like begin to make points about individual strength. So here I just have two examples. Gara, she has DR in her kit. That's pretty cool. Very basic, with no specifics about how it works. It's just we know she has DR. You can make this list as long as you want. She has a nuke. She can defend points, and she's a hot knight. I like that. Pretty simple. Equinox has a nuke. Has a community that consistently rage baits me. Shield gates. She's good in conservation because she has that sleep. Really, this you can make the observation list as long as you want. Just know you're setting yourself up for more work as you progress up this pyramid, which isn't a bad thing. But if you're just trying to make like observations using the model the way that I have, then you might want to be careful and try to prioritize what's actually useful here. Like, I guess that's what the next question is, right? So what is the relevance of what the Warframe does is the second question that strength in general asks. And this is probably the biggest struggle point in my model. It's a pretty subjective metric, which isn't supposed to be happening at the bottom. But in my opinion, it needs to be accounted for the model to work. Ultimately, Warframe is a game about having a full arsenal, and so you can like absolutely main a Warframe if you want, or set of Warframes, but like all features on the frame aren't built equally, and that's on purpose because you're meant to play all of the Warframes ideally, or a large handful of them. And so we don't need to create every Warframe having everything, because you're kind of using you're using the Warframes like Iron Man armor. You're switching out based on situations. Ideally, you don't have to, but that's how it goes. Ivara truthers and underground fish market players might know that Dashwire Arrow is broken as hell for fishing. It's one of the best fishing abilities in the game. How relevant is fishing? Truthfully, it doesn't matter. But I do think there needs to be some mention that like, hey, fishing isn't like super good, but like it's something, right? So again, that's the whole mess of like, okay, if you make these two lists here for Equinox and Gara, gig along, you're gonna run into a problem like very fast. So ultimately, like a hypothetical equation might look like this. You rate like the output out of 10, which we're not supposed to do. So like how strong the output for what's getting done out of 10, and then you rate its relevance out of 10. Again, totally subjective, and then you get a number grade out of 20. So like the example I use here is Gar's 4 for nuking. I would say Gar's 4 is like a 7 or 8 out of 10 for nuking. It does a really good job at early steel path and anything below. And nuking is a 9 out of 10, potentially 10 out of 10 in relevance. It is one of the most relevant things. There's a reason fucking Warframe YouTube is obsessed with it in their clickbait titles. And so Gar's 4 for nuking ends up at a 17 out of 20. That's just an example. Don't worry about the number too much. But what this question asks and what this dimension of the pyramid looks at is like, what is the Warframe doing? Nothing too advanced. That's for the next tier, but we have to have something to build off of. So strength in general just asks like, what can the Warframe do? Like certain Warframes just don't do stuff. Like, they have certain focuses. Some Warframes don't nuke. A lot of Warframes never turn invisible. Like that's totally okay. It's just like, what pieces of utility do you have so we can start to build something as we move the pyramid. So strength and novelty, or uniqueness, asks the question, how do the Warframes perform what they do? And is what they do specifically unique in potency, meaning like strength, or mechanics, like how it works? So this looks into how the previous ladder object, which is the strength in general, the just Gar 4, for example, the nuke, looks at the limits and strengths in both the mechanics and the basic numbers. So like some ability, like you in the tier below here, like on this triangle, you could say, I think Limbo Cataclysm is the best nuke in the game. When it explodes, it does a ton of damage. I'm going to use it to nuke and steel path. Strength and novelty and uniqueness measures potency and would disagree with you as we move up the pyramid, right? So some limits or strengths include, needing other abilities, right? So Gara's 4 does not pop without her 1. Now, is that a real downside? To me, no, because Shattered Lash is broken in its own right. And so it's not like you need Shattered Lash to pop 4. You're going to have, or to mass vitrify. You're going to have Shattered Lash on anyway. So even though you need it, it's not a detriment to you. One of the biggest limits is obviously like line of sight checks. That is a huge, huge thing. Like when that gets touched in balance changes, like it can gut or make certain Warframes. And then obviously too low of base numbers, right? So like mods, whether that's range or damage. So mods, as you guys know, inherit their stats from what the base number on an ability or weapon stat is. If that number is not high enough, the mods cannot carry it. And Warframes it's even worse because most Warframes don't get flat numbers. Like you can get flat crit in a lot of goofy ways very effectively, but like like flat stats in general. But with Warframes, like you can't. There's not much you can do if your nuke ability has a 15-meter base range. Like you're gonna be stressing out trying to make it work properly, like 10-meter base range or whatever. So yeah, sometimes like obviously you can push frames to their absolute limits, and if you want to, you can make a Vara an ability mage nuker. I mean, I don't care. I'm not going to stop you. But ultimately, like base numbers kind of make that entry point to doing what the frame wants to do much easier. And in that same regard, we're talking about like, is it unique in potency or mechanics? To me, this is a tier where comparison begins, so it becomes a semi-shit show, especially if you're like having a discussion with someone else, because like, what do you value? Right? Uniqueness isn't necessarily good or bad. It's just the abilities are different. They are unique from each other, and that is what makes them good, by the way. We want the abilities to be different. We just need to be careful about what we're comparing here, and like, if your argument actually matters. So like my example, as I presented earlier, is Gar's Mass Vitrify versus Equinox's Maim. So like Gar's Mass Vitrify does like insane upfront damage, low level enemies, it just demolishes, no LOS check, awesome, and has a defensive component. Maim deals massive scaling damage with no such defensive component, but like now we have multiple questions we have to ask. First of all, do we care about scaling it? It doesn't matter. That's up to the player, right? Again, this whole model is a means to create an opinion that you can like substantiate essentially. So whether I care about the like having to scale up Maim doesn't matter at this tier, right? Because having to scale Maim sucks when we talk about Equinox's survivability, right? But that's not at this point in the triangle yet. So like personally, I like scaling Maim. I think it's a cool thing that it can scale indefinitely at the cost of having to scale it myself. That's good design, in my opinion. Do I care about the fact that Mass Vitrify has a wall and a AoE freeze and Maim doesn't? I don't care if they're two different abilities. But someone might be like who is comparing, Gar to Equinox might make that calc in their head and they decide, well, I'm not really dealing with high-end Steel Path. I actually like defensive characters, and so for them, even though Equinox's Maim is a better nuke in some settings, Gar's Mass Vitrify would take the cake for them. And that's kind of how strength and novelty works. It's just like asking the questions of what does this ability do that is unique, that makes me like it less. And we're going to kind of expand onto that in our next category. But basically, this is just like, is this ability like uniquely strong? Like, does it do unique things like Gauss's Thermal Sunder, right? It's a pretty basic ability, but once you're full red line, it starts to just absolutely wreck everything in its path. It's incredible. Stuff like Harrow, who has like one of the only giga increases in reload speed, fire rate, attack speed. Like that's completely unique, and that has value because it is unique. So whether we're comparing things because one frame has it and one frame has it but a little bit different, or one frame has it and no one else does, especially at the caliber they have it at, is like pretty unique. Like imagine if we had an ability where like it's Equinox's Maim, but we double the range, we double the base range, but then it gains a LOS check. Now we have like 50 questions, right? Because, okay, Equinox's Maim is really good because it has no LOS check and has infinite scaling damage that we have to build, but like that's okay. I established I don't care about that. But now we double the range. This is like a new Warframe, right? It's Solstice, right? Solstice, reworked new Equinox, right? Everyone's tilted about Sirius on Orion and Equinox. I totally get it, man. But yeah, imagine Maim gets its range doubled. Except it has an LOS check. That would affect a lot of settings. But guess what? Imagine you're playing like Purita Rebellion, dude. That would have like almost no effect. Purita Rebellion is like 80% large open areas. Now you can nuke 100 meters because I believe max range Equinox is 50 meters the way to how I call it. So that can be super cool, right? Like there's a lot of cool stuff that happens when you look at this. This is probably the tier where you're going to have the most revelations, in my opinion, because you're going to be like, wow, this is what I like in Warframes. This is what I don't like in Warframes. Uniqueness is like, this is the step where you kind of realize what your tastes are in terms of what frames do. And I think that's like super important. So again, that's why I'm pushing this model in the way that I am. Strength and opportunity. This is probably the most confusing, but also really important tier. I guess the tier below this is most important, I would say. But this one is unique. This one is unique and has a lot of thinking that needs to be done. So the questions that are asked here are, why can or can't I afford to do because of the bottom pieces here because of this, because of how my ability works and what it is. What can I do or not do? And also what strong meta, quote unquote, again, I'm not a huge fan of that word in the context of Warframe, can I use? What that means is, what the question is essentially asking is, what modding slash build freedom is present because of the way a certain kit works. So this part of the model is really fucking weird because it relies heavily on opinion. This is the tier where two players can make the exact same observation from the tiers below it, but then end up with totally different opinions. So long-winded rant time. Think about Dante. So the way Dante survives is he builds Overguard, right? Through Triumph and Lightburst. He has a bunch of Overguard and he becomes basically invulnerable. How do you scale up your Overguard? Well, you build Power Strength. Power Strength is also how Dante builds up his damage. So it's like, okay, I invest in one stat and I get my survivability and my damage out of it. A lot of frames are not like that, right? With Banshee, you're investing like, and granted, Banshee's damage is absurd, so it's a little bit different, but this is like the case on multiple frames where like I have to sacrifice a shield gate mod. I have to sacrifice, I have to put in a fast deflection, I have to put in the catalyzed shields, or catalyzing shields, and I lose a slot of modding, or I have to use arcane persistence, right? And I like, okay, I've lost an augment slot, I've lost a mod slot, so on and so forth. While Dante, he just builds power strength and he's immortal. Okay, like that can feel kind of bad to some players. I have to put primary direction on in order to tank. I have to build armor in order to tank to meet a persistence threshold. While Dante just sits there, presses 2-2-2-4, and drools all over himself. That can feel kind of bad. But there's another alternate kind of perspective here. When I mentioned like, okay, so two players can make that observation there and feel that way, or not feel that way. Their feelings can be totally different. For me, it depends on the perspective. For me, like, arcane persistence is really strong. That can make you effectively immortal as one of the frames where it's really good, which is a good handful, right? Maybe like a third or a fourth of frames use arcane persistence without like a ton of struggle. You have to get a little bit creative on some of them, but it really makes them damn near immortal, which is super good. For some players, they might think to themselves, well, I hate that I have to equip arcane persistence every single time. That removes from my creativity as a player. Right? On some Warframes, that is the case. In Aros Nidus, these frames that don't have shields, like, they don't get the shield tanking or gating the option. They just have to take persistence, basically, if they're going to deal with, like, fairly late-game content. And that's a problem, in its own really unique way for some players. Other players are like, okay, yeah, I do lose that arcane slot, but persistence is fucking broken, and it means that with, like, one arcane and, like, 1 to 2 mods, I'm Thanos. Like, that's awesome. And that's, again, opinions. Like opinions, that's what I mean. Another good example is augments, right? So like Icy Avalanche and Freeze Force on Frost. Those two augments bring Frost from B+ tier to A+ tier. When he has them, he is one of the stronger frames in the game, I would say. Like really, really good. But like then again, you are losing 2 mod slots. Some of your creativity as a player is dampened because of those augments, because you need to equip them because it makes them so much stronger. Some players would say, I don't care, it makes Frost really fucking strong, I want to use that. Some players are like, no, I lost modding space and that actually feels bad. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways, and one of the things I gotta want you guys to comment on is, where on that spectrum do you lie? Do you care more about modding freedom or care more about strength, right? I think those are two different dimensions that kind of are taken a pretty close look at with strength and opportunity. And then the more simple option is, what strong meta options can I use? What are like, and granted, obviously, like Warframe is a game increasingly where we have like really niche, strong arcanes and mods and stuff. I hope they make more unique mods. Arcanes for sure, like Ice Storm, Crepuscular, Impetus. These are mods that are individually very strong, but like have like these conditions that are really meant to be met on like 5 Warframes or whatever. But like in certain weapons, right, like work better. Like maybe there's a time where, or there was a time actually, where viral plus slash is broken. Okay, Ash gets mileage out of that. Ash has more damage and more duration on his slash procs. That's really good for Ash. Sometimes the quote unquote meta, which like again, annoying term, but it has some relevance here, where it's like the way you deal with enemies, certain Warframes are just better at. As it turns out, when enemies have a lot of health, percent health true damage on Sevagoth is really good, right? Again, as I mentioned, Arcane Impetus, right? Impetus is a really good arcane. with a really tough condition to meet. You have to proc a lot of unique statuses with your abilities. In exchange, you get like little more than 70% ability strength, I think, and a ton of efficiency, which feels pretty good. So if you can proc Impetus, you're really happy. A Ram like Dante doesn't have his whole kit invested in proccing Impetus, but he gets to use it, which is awesome. He gets to use Encumber too, which is awesome, without ever having to draw his sidearm. Like, that makes him strong. Him being able to do that makes him very strong, because that synergy is very strong, and not all other frames get to do that. Crepuscular, huge crit multiplier, plus a power strength buff as well. Frames that get to go invisible, it works really well on, as it turns out. And some frames just either have to like really work hard to get those kind of buffs, like maybe equipping evade, maybe using a companion and using like a with Noko, his companion build where he uses roar. Like, you may have to do a lot of circumventing to get around to that kind of synergy, while someone like Dante, it literally he just has to own the arcanes and mods, and then he's done. So yeah, strength and opportunity basically refers to your ability to like equip strong things without having to jump through a million hoops. And for some players, the appeal of Warframe is jumping through those hoops, right? Like, people who like to make Banshee work, including me, I have an entire guide, you should totally check that out. That's fun for me, because Banshee has potential, but there are some frames in this game who just don't have that potential and end up being really frustrating to build because of that. So when a frame is really strong, you're given more modding freedom. With the case of Dante, like I explained, and again with Dante, he can use really strong arcanes and really strong synergies to do a lot of damage with little to no effort. It sucks that I kind of had to use Dante for both examples here, but I did just like spend many hours of my life on a Dante guide, so it makes sense. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the free Dante in that regard. So we're gonna move on to the final T here, and then I'm going to some examples, because that's pretty important. Thank you guys, by the way, for your viewership. Love you guys tons. Let's move to the next slide. Strength in design. Oh boy, this is the toughest one for me to construct. This was a colossal pain in my ass, basically. It can just really easily devolve into bullshit, because it's kind of it's tricky. Like, what is satisfying to play? What feels like a good kit? Some players like playing Revenant and just pressing 2 and being strong, and that's totally cool. Some players like stressing themselves out with like fucking like a zillion APM warframes, and they just like whatever. Everyone has different playstyles, and so strength and design is going to easily be the biggest shit show. This is also the top of the pyramid, right? So we're gonna be farting out our opinion in due time. So basically, we just want our kit to have like some synergies in there, some gameplay loops, some level of identity, we want unique things going on. And again, every frame is different, every player is different, and this creates like a multiplicative infinite amount of possibilities, to the point where the perfect frame per player can just never exist, unless it's Harrow, who is perfect for me. Yeah, it's just rough. You're gonna have to. That's why, like, what happens is nobody makes their own frame. That's not how this game works. Frames just come out and you decide what you like or don't like. Right? That's usually how it goes. And then we're talking about like a frame being satisfying to play, whether individually or holistically. What that refers to is basically like, there are some abilities in this game that are incredibly satisfying to use. What's like off the top of my head? I don't know. I think Hydroid 2 is pretty fun to use. I think Wrathful Advance is a very like satisfying ability. There's ability Collective Curse is super fun. I love Calero. That frame is super fun. There are frames in the game that are satisfying to play, abilities in the game that are satisfying to play. For example, one of my favorite things in the world is Varuna's Augment with a Prey of Dinar, where it marks a target. Because like that shit makes me feel like a real hunter. Like, that's super cool. The fact that like in Warframe, a horde shooter, I'm actually like incentivized to go for a single target. I felt that way with Araxia's Mercy's Kiss as well. If there's a target that can be mercy finished, like I'll be able to do that, which is super cool. Yeah, I really like a lot of that, what's going on. For me, that's satisfying. For some people, it's satisfying to play Noko and jump around, Noko, and you just like nuke everything the whole map, and that's fun, right? So like everyone has their own definition, but like again, the goal of this pyramid is not to prove anything. It is for you to take your Warframe that you like, shoot it at the pyramid, and be able to substantiate your opinion and explain it to someone who's trying to play your Warframe, maybe who's trying to understand why you enjoy it so much, and so that they can enjoy it, right? I have no intention of like being some kind of like chud debate lord with this shit. Like, this is a model I made for fun, for you to use for fun. So In order to kind of cover strength and design, I'm going to talk about some design choices that I like, and then we can wrap this one up. So I'm going to cover 3 frames that I like, 2 that I kind of have problems with, and we'll just move on. So again, I'd really appreciate if you guys talked in the comments about your favorite design, your favorite Warframe design, because that is a video that is coming up like fairly soon, like my top 5-10 Warframe designs, just in terms of like what I like to play. So starting with Araxia. Araxia has a kit that rewards fairly active gameplay, and the abilities are fairly strong, but they don't really have much direct synergy, right? Like, okay, we have a debuff in the form of the spiders, which causes more spiders to spawn, which like fully strips armor, so more debuffing, another debuffing in the webbed embrace, like that's okay. I mean, two debuffs, I guess, pretty good. But it's not like the spiders, I don't think they gain like bonus effects or anything when they're on the webs, and like Araxia doesn't really gain anything when she's on the webs, I don't think, but she clings to walls. The whole kit just flows together, even though the abilities don't really like intermingle too hard. They're just meant to be casted together because they're on the same Warframe, and they perform, and they like have different outcomes that are like very strong together. Mercy's Kiss is, again, really compelling ability. It can instantly replenish your energy bar super fast, but it asks you to be kind of active, right? So like, don't just brain dead mow everything down with the Sobek. Try to keep a target alive and then kill it with Mercy's Kiss and replenish like half your energy with one target. Like, pretty good stuff. You can obviously elect to like branded health tank with Araxia, as a lot of players tend to do, but I like the invis and the bonus on Silken Stride, right? This has you playing very actively. This has you bouncing to walls because Silken Stride's invis, or your passive invis, I guess, only lasts 8 seconds. So it has you bouncing around a ton, which is super, super fun. And if you're using Crepuscular, which the Sobek doesn't really take advantage of, so like it depends on what weapon you're using. I'd say my biggest problem with Araxia is the Sobek, which isn't her fault. The Sobek just feels oppressively good on her. And then obviously her other 2 abilities are debuffs. But like for me, this frame is just so satisfying to play, and I feel really funky when I take an ability off of her. I really don't like it. It's a unique case of that. Normally, I think the helmet system is not my favorite thing, but like, creativity's good. With Araxia, I feel weird when I take an ability off. It just does not feel right at all. All of her abilities are satisfying to use, and in conjunction, get really, 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 really good outcomes. So why would I have no reason to change it, in my opinion. Harrow. Now, Harrow's my goat, and Harrow's got problems, but I'm going to talk about them only in a second. Harrow definitely feels like a case of incredibly potent, synergistic gameplay. While Araxia focuses on the individual strength of kind of like a freestyle use of the kit, Harrow generally wants to be played in a fairly strict pattern, which I think is in theme for him, honestly, which is really cool. I think like I hope they add more personality to Warframes. I think it's one of the big things that is kind of missing in this game. Harrow is one of the most unique characters of a Warframe, it feels like. I mean, it has a lot to do with Rel and whatnot. I'm not a massive lore head, but Harrow is my favorite frame, so makes sense. In exchange for very active gameplay, Harrow was given very high reload speed, fire rate, attack speed numbers, tons of energy, and again, he has like the best flat crit rate buff in the game, so pretty good stuff. But in return, he has to manage penance, which is a multi-step process. He can't miss headshots too often. Spamming condemn is kind of annoying, and yeah, there's just a lot going on there. Harrow definitely has some problems. First of all, again, some players don't like that fact that he has to be played in a very strict ritual format. He has to constantly be sticking to like his IKEA instructions of a kit for the most part. Obviously, there's Evade Harrow where things get changed up. I use Pillage Harrow, which changes things up as well. There's different ways to play Harrow, but for base kit, which I think is really good, it definitely wants to be played a specific way, and some players aren't going to like that. And some players don't like weapon platforms either, so Harrow has some problems, right? Like, you can't recast Covenant, which means you can't get the invulnerability on command, which I think is really lame. But for some players, that's like a valid punishment. Like, okay, you get this insane crit buff, but you're not allowed to get the invulnerability on command. To me, that makes sense, but I could see why a player would see that as a downside. I'll actually talk about that in a second. That's actually a super important point. You have to get all the kills. Like, Harrow is a support in quotation marks. I don't know why he's not really meant to be a support. His life's still super cool. He just doesn't really he offers a bunch of energy and the shield, whatever. His shields struggle to stay relevant in higher scrutiny content sometimes, but holes in design don't always necessarily mean that a design is bad, right? The main issue is when other frames get better, less restrictive options that leave you in the dark, alongside the powerful output that was once the caveat to your strength. What that means is imagine if a character comes out like Harrow with none of the debuffs and still the same output. like, obviously Warframe is not designed like League of Legends or whatever you play, right? It's not like, oh, my character is harder, so it gets more. That's not really how Warframe feels, because it's not supposed to be as a mechanically skill based game, which is for better or for worse. I think it's probably for better. Even though I do tend to like the more active playstyles, I do think that if you're going to create restrictions within a kit like Harrow, then he does need to be rewarded regardless. So yeah, like, having those restrictions is not a problem. It only becomes a problem when frames do what you do better without those restrictions in place. And Harrow is not really the biggest victim of that, in my opinion. But yeah, moving on. Dante. This is probably going to rage bait a couple people, and fair enough. I do think Dante's design is quite good. It's just like his numbers are pretty stupid, and he kind of does everything, which is a little bit unreasonable. But I still think his design is super good. Some people get bored of a frame like Dante, and that is totally valid. I am one of those people. I don't particularly care for playing him. I think it's kind of boring. But for some players, that appeal is power, and Dante is an accessible, easy way to achieve that appeal. Also, like, I will be very real with you, and you can refute me in the comments if I'm wrong. But like 50% of the reason that I play certain Warframes is for their fashion, for the way they look and their aesthetics. So like, whatever. That's just what I think. And so, like, with Dante being the true like librarian mage, I hope they add more mage Warframes. Like, he is kind of that guy, right? It's a super cool aesthetic. That's why I have him with the Doctor Strange fit. Dante's spell combos are a really fun, compelling way to make the kit feel much more unique. He's still like insane output, but like the fact that you kind of have to spend, and it's not even that like putting the spell combos together is hard. It's not. It's just like fun, right? Like, not everything that's mechanically difficult has to be like fun. Whatever, things can be stupid and fun. Like, someone might think that the point of Dante, like, okay, I got it. Wait, let me think. Okay, some people think that the book and the light verse stuff and the dark verse stuff is supposed to be some sort of inhibition to like be like, oh, he's pretty broken, but you gotta know the combos. That's not the point. The spell combos are just supposed to be fun, and that's awesome. Like, this kit's output is just stupid. The numbers are absurd. I'm having fun on Dante every 60 seconds because I have so much fun actually doing the spell rotations, seeing the animation, hearing the sounds. But like, for the 60 seconds that Word Ward and Page Flight and Triumph are up, I'm just drooling over myself and not having very much fun. And I'm just weapon platforming. Obviously you can play for Tragedy if you want, and Noctua is very, very good. I had a lot of people in my comments on my Dante guide, which you should check out if you want. Talk about how they used him as a weapons platform for Noctua, and that made it a lot more exciting. You should try that. But for me, he doesn't feel like a real caster. He feels more like a support, which he's supposed to be. He's not really supposed to be like an offensive casting mage. Most of his kit is still geared towards support. So obviously I think this will rage bait some players because Dante is very strong. Very, very strong. And so people might see him as OP and therefore bad design. But I don't think those two are exactly always in tandem. All right. Oh boy. Okay. A case study in design flaws, Revenant and Oberon. Mesmer Skin and Righteous Negation are violently uninteresting abilities that actively cannibalize a lot of what these frames have going on. I'm not here to complain that their designs are bad, because they mostly aren't. I just think they could be a lot more compelling, especially Revenant. I wrote a Revenant rework. You should check it out. I think it's pretty good. Both have like low to no condition and vulnerability that actively cannibalizes their other components, like the healing and armor that Oberon offers, which, granted, to be fair, healing and armor are still useful things, especially with things like Primary Bulwark, and Arcane Battery. Like, they're still good, and like, nowadays, with, again, this will become less of an issue, I think, as we move on, because every stat like becomes more useful. I hope they add more armor, health, shield scalings in the game. I think all of that is like super fun and makes it so that you just don't build power strength on every character, right? The shield health vamp that Reeve has, the aggro redirection that Enthrall has for Revenant, like, these are, you're just discouraged, I'm stupid, from using the rest of their kits because you're invulnerable now. And you just get to drool all over yourself. And then here we go, the classic. Oh, Dante's invulnerability is good and healthy and good design, but Revenant and Oberon bad. I disliked the video and leaked your IP address. Whatever. Dante's survivability doesn't make pressing any of his other abilities, as incredibly strong as they are, less compelling. I'm not saying that invincibility is bad, even though I personally feel like it is. That's not pertinent to the video. So what I'm saying is that abilities here eat up the entire kit like power balance, and I think it's really lame, and it makes you not want to play the frame in a way that is compelling, because some players, this includes me, like the green, like we see things like Mesmer skin. This is not that bad for me, but we see things like Mesmer skin or like just really broken abilities, and like the Green Goblin mask comes on, and like we can't fight the demons anymore, and we just need to use something broken, and then we bore ourselves to death, and then we resent the game for it, like. Right, and the fault isn't on the game, or it's not on just on us either. But like it happens, and it's up to the devs to make strength compelling and not so boring, because some players cannot help themselves, right? And yeah, that kind of wraps up the video. Um, we'll take a look at the triangle one more time. So again, we start with strength in general, which is looking at like just the what, right? What does the Warframe do? How relevant is it to the content that needs to be done? Again, like things like nuking, speed, stuff like that, survivability. These are very potent, very important things. While like your ability to do like conservation, your ability to speedrun spy missions, blah, blah, they are less relevant, right? But they're still good. Again, it's just like how much work do you want to do climbing this triangle, right? Strength and novelty / uniqueness focuses on the how strong something is, the numbers behind it, the mechanics behind it, the limits, the LOS checks, blah, 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 all that shit. Strength and opportunity refers to like what synergies are present there, what's particularly strong in the game right now, as determined by like whether whether it was Hunter's Munitions viral back in the day, whether it's status spam, if there's a certain meta weapon or a piece of content that dictates that something be used, so on and so forth, right? Again, meta is an overused word, but like that's kind of what this looks at. And then strength and design is totally subjective slop. Like you could kind of determine what you like. That's going to go into the player, and we shoot out an opinion. So feel free to like leave your thoughts on this, not only the model, but like also throw your own frame or throw your own ability through the ringer and see how it feels. Because I really like this concept a lot, and I want to share it with you guys. So that wraps it up here. This was a really important video. I wanted to make this one really bad, and hopefully you guys enjoy this PowerPoint format. I think it's really, really fun. I love running my mouth, and I don't like editing so much. So building the PowerPoint instead of like a full script and then having to do all the work in post as well is super annoying. But this I enjoy a lot more, and I feel like I really get to run my mouth more, and you get to see more of my personality, which I think is good for the Warframe content community scene. So yeah, that's it. I will see you guys next week. So much love to you all. Happy holidays if you're celebrating anything coming up. And I will talk to you very, very soon. Much love. Have a good day or night. Bye-bye.